Movie-based video games have always had a reputation for being less than stellar, but one company proved they could take those licenses and turn them into something not only enjoyable but super challenging. How did Ocean Software become one of the largest movie-based video game developers? Let's find out on what happened to Ocean Software. Founded in 1983, Ocean Software was originally called Spectrum Games, but not after the ZX Spectrum, which they were developing arcade clones for. Due to the confusion between their name and the ZX Spectrum console, they would decide to change it to Ocean Software. They would develop a few games in-house such as Hunchback and High Noon, but in 1984 would switch from development to publication after acquiring the defunct development company Imagine. Imagine was a British video game company known for developing polished games with high budget packaging and advertising, something rare at the time in the British software industry. After failing to pay for their tape duplication costs, they were forced to sell their rights to their games to Bo Jolly. Still unable to pay their debt, they would go defunct, allowing Ocean Software to purchase the rights to the company's name. Ocean Software was releasing a good amount of games for the Commodore 64 in the 80s. The Commodore 64 used cassette tapes to store the games, and these tapes were known for having very long load times that could take up to 30 minutes. Ocean Software would use a special loading system called the Ocean Loader. It would display a graphic from the video game that was loading and play one of 5 different tunes to make the load times less painful for the gamer. The other downside to these cassette tapes, they could easily be duplicated and pirated. The founder of Ocean Software, David Ward, would even appear in a documentary called The Code Show discussing the video game piracy in the 80s.
Larger threat is professional counterfeiting or even schoolboy copying. And how do you recognize the genuine from the fake, or know when it's being sold?
Oh, I get your Christmas cards, 15 pence a packet. 12, 50 pence a packet.
Street markets are thought to be a good place to look. We took David Ward of Ocean to a market outside Manchester. The industry believes that stalls like this are a common source of pirate tapes. And indeed we did find illegal music cassettes being sold for £2 each, like this copy of Frankie Goes to Hollywood's latest release, with its crude black and white photocopy of the label. But from the evidence of a police raid earlier in the year, David Ward is convinced that there is also much more professional counterfeiting of computer games, something which may cost Ocean £100,000 in sales over the year.
We have here a couple of tapes. This is one of our top-selling games of last year, Hunchback. And we can see here that we've got, this is a commercially pirated copy as opposed to something that somebody's made at home. These people have gone to the business of reprinting coloured inlay cards, which is quite expensive to set up. So they would obviously have had to have done several thousand to make it worth their while. The difference, I suppose, to the average chap in the street wouldn't be that obvious. On the left here is the real thing, and on the right is a very professional piece of computer piracy. Now, with this kind of situation, we obviously suffer a commercial loss because the total number of programs sold are dramatically affected by the fact that we're not making all the programs that are sold. It isn't quite the same situation as what's called home copying, where a chap borrows his neighbour's cassette and reproduces it for himself. I think our real problem in the industry is people making copies for gain on a large scale rather than the odd schoolboy at home copying. Although I don't condone that, I don't think it's as big or as significant. And I think in a way it's an endemic part of computer hacking that kids will try and get into a tape.
In 1984, Ocean Software would be hired by Konami to publish their arcade games for home computer systems. This definitely added to the amount of games Ocean Software was publishing, but they were still looking to make a name for themselves. And in 1985, Ocean Software would acquire their first movie licenses. The first movie-based title they would release was Rambo. Released in 1985 for the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, and the Commodore 64. It was a top-down shooter that received decent praise. They would continue releasing movie-based video games for home computer systems such as Short Circuit, Miami Vice, Cobra, and RoboCop. RoboCop would release to critical praise and would remain at the top of the charts for almost an entire year. With the amount of work Ocean Software was doing as a publisher, word would get around and they would end up signing deals with Taito and Data East in 1986 to port over some of their arcade games to home consoles. They would also use their success and open a new office in France called Ocean Software France. This studio would be responsible for creating 16-bit conversions of their games from 1986 to 1996. In 1987, with some of their movie license games not doing so great, such as Highlander, which could be Ocean Software's worst game ever and was described by one reviewer as totally boring and quite unplayable. Due to this, they would once again publish a few original games such as Head Over Heels, Match Day 2, and Whizball. In 1988, they would release their first movie-based video game, Platoon, for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In 1989, they would win Best 8-Bit Software House of the Year award from Golden Joystick Awards. From 1989 through the mid-90s, they would continue producing movie-based titles for the NES and the Super Nintendo. Some of their more critically acclaimed 16-bit movie titles were Batman the Movie, RoboCop 3, and Hook. They would announce a merger in 1996 with French publisher Infogrames for $130 million. I think this was due to the success Ocean Software was having in the industry, and Infogrames wanted to break into the international big leagues. With the acquisition, Infogrames would strengthen their catalog with the addition of Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, RoboCop, and Batman. This acquisition also gave them a UK-based company with Ocean Software's headquarters and a US office with Ocean's US subsidiary. Ocean Software would remain as a separate division from Infogrames until 1998 when they were rebranded to Infogrames United Kingdom Limited. Their last game to be published was Mission Impossible for the Nintendo 64, which received mixed reviews but ended up selling 1.13 million copies by February 1999. Ocean Software will always be best remembered for creating movie-based titles. Unfortunately, Infogrames didn't keep their name around, and it's fallen off the radar much like a lot of the video game companies that didn't survive the 80s and 90s. Thanks for joining me on what happened to Ocean Software. If I missed any key information about the company you feel should have been included in this video, please post in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, like the video, and follow me on social media. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.